So we want to start off by looking at budgets as one of the most important tools for getting control of our expenses and our financial situation is our budget. So according to Fortune, a budget is basically a system that allows you to plan for both your income and expenses over the course of a set period of time. One of the reasons why I opted for this definition and why I like it is because it looks at both the income and the expenses. Most people, when they look at the budget, they only look at the expense side. So they look at the budget as more of a restriction rather than as an intention. And that's how we want to look at the budget as something that we have control over, if only control in the sense of setting an intent with respect to both our income and our expense. So quickly going over five or so of the more popular budgeting methods. There is the very popular 50-30-20 formula that we'll get into. There is also something called the zero-based budget. There is a 10-90 budget, and there is also the 80-20 budget, and then there is the envelope budget. And the budgeting system is one that you can actually use consistently, and each method is going to have its own strengths and its I'll call it drawbacks, but it will depend on which one is better aligned to your individual personality or your financial situation. So let's look at each of them in detail. Before that, there is a broad series or a broad process effectively that you can use to create any budget. And these steps will apply to any budget that you're creating. So one of them, and we've talked about this in previous modules, is to actually write down all of your recurring obligations. So all of your recurring bills, debt payments, etc. And then you want to record everything that you spend on. So you want to log every single expense that you can. And then the next step in that process is going to be to review and project. So you want to analyze all your spending and then also to forecast the next week's spending. And then going into that next week, what you will do is you'll record and then compare the actual spending to your projections. Now, after completing a few weeks of tracking, what you'll be able to do is you'll be able to categorize all of your spending in the major categories being groceries, transportation, utilities, etc. You can also add things such as entertainment or fun and education as other categories that will be used to really organize this budget. Then, once you would have categorized them based on the historical tracking that you'd have done, you'll be able to assign realistic amounts for each of the categories. And once you have done that, what you have effectively done is created a budget for all of your expenses. You can do something similar on the income side. The 50-30-20 budget is a very common formula that persons use, and it's one of the most popular ones that financial advisors will recommend to persons once they're starting out in creating their budgets. It's really more for persons that are looking to follow a very set criteria and have a very specific objective in mind. So what it seeks to do, it seeks to maximize two things. One would be it seeks to maximize the amount that you can save and invest, as well as it prioritizes your non-essential spending. So the 50-30 formula goes, 50% goes towards your needs, and that's going to cover essential expenses like groceries, your insurance, minimum debt payments, utilities, housing naturally, right? And then the 30 comes in where you look at allocating 30% towards your wants. This would include non-essential spending like entertainment, shopping, hobbies, vacations, etc. Luxury items as well, if you're the type of person that likes those kind of things. And then 20% is really geared towards savings and debt reduction. So this 20% is split between funding your emergency fund, funding a retirement account, as well as putting funds towards investments, as well as extra debt payment. Another formula that persons might use is what is known as a zero-based budget. And this one is very simple. All it does is it looks at effectively allocating every dollar to a specific purpose, such that once you have completed your budget, the difference between expenses and your income is zero. So that it doesn't necessarily mean that one spends everything. However, it does mean that every single dollar in the budget is allocated. So whether it goes to the category of investing, saving, a need, a want, or a different goal that you might be saving towards. And this one can be implemented pretty easily. It can be done using a custom spreadsheet, or you can use just basic pen and paper. This is going to be helpful for persons who are more detail oriented. So persons like me, for example, who are very analytical about how their money is going out and want to see where every single cent is going. Another budgeting mechanism is what I call the 1090 budget. And this one focuses on a principle from The Richest Man in Babylon. It's geared towards paying yourself first. So once you adopt the principle of taking out that fixed 10 or 20% of your income and then putting that aside, then all of the other funds, the remaining 90 or 80%, you can decide to use however you like. As the main focus of this budget process is to really focus on saving that 10%. And some of the benefits of it is that it really forces you to be consistent with that habit of saving 10%. 10% is also easy to remember, so it simplifies the budgeting process. And then it gives you that freedom basically to do what you will with the remainder of your money. So whether you want to put 20% towards your wants, and then the other 80%, in this case being towards being from the 90% that would have been left after you've taken out that 10%. So it gives you that type of freedom. Again, the main purpose of this is really focusing on that 10% that is really saved. The last strategy that we'll cover is what is known as the envelope system for budgeting. And it's more of a traditional method, but it can actually be implemented in the digital age, because now we have the opportunity to have like multiple bank accounts. And with multiple bank accounts, you can also have multiple accounts within the same bank. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we start talking about the savings part. But this method basically sees you putting money for different categories in different buckets. So the discipline that it facilitates is that once that envelope is empty, you effectively have exhausted all the spending that you can do within that category, and you effectively have to employ some level of discipline to know that it's going to be within the next pay cycle or within the next income cycle that you will be able to spend money from that envelope or from that bucket. So the digital alternative for this would be to use some of those apps that we'd have talked about in previous modules, such as your Every Dollar app, your You Need a Budget app, and your Money Lover app, for example. So, this, I would have spoken to this already, but this is basically the 80-20 budget, where you look to save 20% first. It's another variation of the 1090 formula, but this one is just looking at 80 and 20 instead, where you are automatically transferring, saving, allocating 20% towards saving and investing, and then you are free to spend the other 80% as you um, decide.